Top 10 Emerging Technologies of 2021. Experts highlight advances with the potential to revolutionize industry, healthcare and society. If some of the many thousands of human volunteers needed to test coronavirus vaccines could have been replaced by digital replicas, one of this year's top 10 emerging technologies, COVID-19 vaccines might have been developed even faster, saving untold lives. Soon virtual clinical trials could be a reality for testing new vaccines and therapies. Other technologies on the list could reduce greenhouse gas emissions by electrifying air travel and enabling sunlight to directly power the production of industrial chemicals. With spatial computing, the digital and physical worlds will be integrated in ways that go beyond the feats of virtual reality. And ultrasensitive sensors that exploit quantum processes will set the stage for such applications as wearable brain scanners and vehicles that can see around corners. These and the other emerging technologies have been singled out by an international steering group of experts. The group, convened by Scientific American and the World Economic Forum, sifted through more than 75 nominations. To win the nod, the technologies must have the potential to spur progress in societies and economies by outperforming established ways of doing things. They also need to be novel, that is, not currently in wide use, yet likely to have a major impact within the next 3 to 5 years. The steering group met, virtually, to whittle down the candidates and then closely evaluate the front runners before making the final decisions. We hope you are as inspired by the reports that follow as we are. 1. Microneedles could enable painless injections and blood draws. Microneedles could enable painless injections and blood draws. Fewer trips to medical labs make care more accessible. Early visible needles, or microneedles, are poised to usher in an era of pain-free injections and blood testing. Whether attached to a syringe or a patch, microneedles prevent pain by avoiding contact with nerve endings. Typically 50 to 2000 microns in length, about the depth of a sheet of paper, and 1 to 100 microns wide, about the width of human hair, they penetrate the dead top layer of skin to reach into the second layer, the epidermis, consisting of viable cells and a liquid known as interstitial fluid. But most do not reach or only barely touch the underlying dermis, where the nerve endings lie, along with blood and lymph vessels and connective tissue. Many microneedle syringe and patch applications are already available for administering vaccines, and many more are in clinical trials for use in treating diabetes, cancer and neuropathic pain. Because these devices insert drugs directly into the epidermis or dermis, they deliver medicines much more efficiently than familiar transdermal patches, which rely on diffusion through the skin. This year researchers debuted a novel technique for treating skin disorders such as psoriasis, warts and certain types of cancer, mixing star-shaped microneedles into a therapeutic cream or gel. The needle's temporary, gentle perforation of the skin enhances passage of the therapeutic agent. Many microneedle products are moving toward commercialization for rapid, painless draws of blood or interstitial fluid and for use in diagnostic testing or health monitoring. Tiny holes made by the needles induce a local change in pressure in the epidermis or dermis that forces interstitial fluid or blood into a collection device. If the needles are coupled to biosensors, the devices can, within minutes, directly measure biological markers indicative of health or disease status, such as glucose, cholesterol, alcohol, drug byproducts or immune cells. Some products would allow the draws to be done at home and mailed to a lab or analyzed on the spot. At least one product has already cleared regulatory hurdles for such use. The US and Europe recently approved the tap blood collection device from Seventh Sense Biosystems, which enables laypeople to collect a small sample of blood on their own, whether for sending to a lab or for self-monitoring. In research settings, microneedles are also being integrated with wireless communication devices to measure a biological molecule, use the measurement to determine a proper drug dose, and then deliver that dose, an approach that could help realize the promise of personalized medicine. Microneedle devices could enable testing and treatment to be delivered in underserved areas because they do not require costly equipment or a lot of training to administer. Micron Biomedical has developed one such easy-to-use device, a bandage-sized patch that anyone can apply. Another company called Vaxis is developing a microneedle vaccine patch that in animal and early human testing elicited enhanced immune responses using a mere fraction of the usual dose. Microneedles can also reduce the risk of transmitting blood-borne viruses and decrease hazardous waste from the disposal of conventional needles. Tiny needles are not always an advantage, they will not suffice when large doses are needed. Not all drugs can pass through microneedles, nor can all biomarkers be sampled through them. More research is needed to understand how factors such as the age and weight of the patient, the site of injection and the delivery technique influence the effectiveness of microneedle-based technologies. Still, these painless prickers can be expected to significantly expand drug delivery and diagnostics, and new uses will arise as investigators devise ways to use them in organs beyond the skin. 2. Sun-powered chemistry can turn carbon dioxide into common materials. Sun-powered chemistry can turn carbon dioxide into common materials. Visible light can drive industrial processes. The manufacture of many chemicals important to human health and comfort consumes fossil fuels, thereby contributing to extractive processes, carbon dioxide emissions and climate change. A new approach employs sunlight to convert waste carbon dioxide into these needed chemicals, potentially reducing emissions in two ways: by using the unwanted gas as a raw material and sunlight, not fossil fuels, as the source of energy needed for production. This process is becoming increasingly feasible thanks to advances in sunlight-activated catalysts, or photocatalysts. In recent years, investigators have developed photocatalysts that break the resistant double bond between carbon and oxygen in carbon dioxide. This is a critical first step in creating solar refineries that produce useful compounds from the waste gas, including platform molecules that can serve as raw materials for the synthesis of such varied products as medicines, detergents, fertilizers and textiles. Photocatalysts are typically semiconductors, which require high-energy ultraviolet light to generate the electrons involved in the transformation of carbon dioxide. Yet ultraviolet light is both scarce, representing just 5% of sunlight, and harmful. The development of new catalysts that work under more abundant and benign visible light has therefore been a major objective. That demand is being addressed by careful engineering of the composition, structure and morphology of existing catalysts, such as titanium dioxide. Although it efficiently converts carbon dioxide into other molecules solely in response to ultraviolet light, doping it with nitrogen greatly lowers the energy required to do so. The altered catalyst now needs only visible light to yield widely used chemicals such as methanol, formaldehyde and formic acid, collectively important in the manufacture of adhesives, foams, plywood, cabinetry, flooring and disinfectants. At the moment, solar chemical research is occurring mainly in academic laboratories, including at the Joint Center for Artificial Photosynthesis, run by the California Institute of Technology in partnership with Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory, a Netherlands-based collaboration of universities, industry and research and technology organizations called the Sunrise Consortium, and the Department of Heterogeneous Reactions at the Max Planck Institute for Chemical Energy Conversion in Mulheim, Germany. Some startups are working on a different approach to transforming carbon dioxide into useful substances, namely, applying electricity to drive the chemical reactions. Using electricity to power the reactions would obviously be less environmentally friendly than using sunlight if the electricity were derived from fossil fuel combustion, but reliance on photovoltaics could overcome that drawback. The advances occurring in the sunlight-driven conversion of carbon dioxide into chemicals are sure to be commercialized and further developed by start-ups or other companies in the coming years. Then the chemical industry, by transforming what today is waste carbon dioxide into valuable products, will move a step closer to becoming part of a true, waste-free, circular economy, as well as helping to make the goal of generating negative emissions a reality. 3. Virtual patients could revolutionize medicine. Virtual patients could revolutionize medicine. Every day, it seems, some new algorithm enables computers to diagnose a disease with unprecedented accuracy, renewing predictions that computers will soon replace doctors. What if computers could replace patients as well? If virtual humans could have replaced real people in some stages of a coronavirus vaccine trial, for instance, it could have sped development of a preventive tool and slowed down the pandemic. Similarly, potential vaccines that weren't likely to work could have been identified early, slashing trial costs and avoiding testing poor vaccine candidates on living volunteers. These are some of the benefits of in silico medicine, or the testing of drugs and treatments on virtual organs or body systems to predict how a real person will respond to the therapies. For the foreseeable future, real patients will be needed in late-stage studies, but in silico trials will make it possible to conduct quick and inexpensive first assessments of safety and efficacy, drastically reducing the number of live human subjects required for experimentation. With virtual organs, the modeling begins by feeding anatomical data drawn from non-invasive high-resolution imaging of an individual's actual organ into a complex mathematical model of the mechanisms that govern that organ's function. Algorithms running on powerful computers resolve the resulting equations and unknowns, generating a virtual organ that looks and behaves like the real thing. In silico clinical trials are already underway to an extent. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration, for instance, is using computer simulations in place of human trials for evaluating new mammography systems. The agency has also published guidance for designing trials of drugs and devices that include virtual patients. Beyond speeding results and mitigating the risks of clinical trials, in silico medicine can be used in place of risky interventions that are required for diagnosing or planning treatment of certain medical conditions. For example, heart flow analysis, a cloud-based service approved by the FDA, enables clinicians to identify coronary artery disease based on CT images of a patient's heart. The heart flow system uses these images to construct a fluid dynamic model of the blood running through the coronary blood vessels, thereby identifying abnormal conditions and their severity. Without this technology, doctors would need to perform an invasive angiogram to decide whether and how to intervene. Experimenting on digital models of individual patients can also help personalize therapy for any number of conditions and is already used in diabetes care. The philosophy behind in silico medicine is not new. The ability to create and simulate the performance of an object under hundreds of operating conditions has been a cornerstone of engineering for decades, such as for designing electronic circuits, airplanes and buildings. Various hurdles remain to its widespread implementation in medical research and treatment. First, the predictive power and reliability of this technology must be confirmed, and that will require several advances. Those include the generation of high-quality medical databases from a large, ethnically diverse patient base that has women as well as men, refinement of mathematical models to account for the many interacting processes in the body, and further modification of artificial intelligence methods that were developed primarily for computer-based speech and image recognition and need to be extended to provide biological insights. The scientific community and industry partners are addressing these issues through initiatives such as the Living Heart Project by Dassault Systèmes, the Virtual Physiological Human Institute for Integrative Biomedical Research and Microsoft's Healthcare Next. In recent years, the FDA and European regulators have approved some commercial uses of computer-based diagnostics, but meeting regulatory demands requires considerable time and money. Creating demand for these tools is challenging given the complexity of the healthcare ecosystem. In silico medicine must be able to deliver cost-effective value for patients, clinicians and healthcare organizations to accelerate their adoption of the technology. 4. Spatial computing could be the next big thing. Imagine Martha, an octogenarian who lives independently and uses a wheelchair. All objects in her home are digitally cataloged. All sensors and the devices that control objects have been internet-enabled, and a digital map of her home has been merged with the object map. As Martha moves from her bedroom to the kitchen, the lights switch on, and the ambient temperature adjusts. The chair will slow if her cat crosses her path. When she reaches the kitchen, the table moves to improve her access to the refrigerator and stove, then moves back when she is ready to eat. Later, if she begins to fall when getting into bed, her furniture shifts to protect her, and an alert goes to her son and the local monitoring station. The spatial computing at the heart of this scene is the next step in the ongoing convergence of the physical and digital worlds. It does everything virtual reality and augmented reality apps do. Digitize objects that connect via the cloud, allow sensors and motors to react to one another, and digitally represent the real world. Then it combines these capabilities with high-fidelity spatial mapping to enable a computer coordinator to track and control the movements and interactions of objects as a person navigates through the digital or physical world. Spatial computing will soon bring human-machine and machine-machine interactions to new levels of efficiency in many walks of life, among them industry, healthcare, transportation and the home. Major companies, including Microsoft and Amazon, are heavily invested in the technology. 5. Digital medicine can diagnose and treat what ails you. Digital medicine can diagnose and treat what ails you. Therapeutic and diagnostic apps and bots are almost here. Could the next prescription from your doctor be for an app? A raft of apps in use or under development can now detect or monitor mental and physical disorders autonomously or directly administer therapies. Collectively known as digital medicines, the software can both enhance traditional medical care and support patients when access to healthcare is limited, a need that the COVID-19 crisis has exacerbated. Many detection aids rely on mobile devices to record such features as users' voices, locations, facial expressions, exercise, sleep and texting activity. Then they apply artificial intelligence to flag the possible onset or exacerbation of a condition. Some smartwatches, for instance, contain a sensor that automatically detects and alerts people to atrial fibrillation, a dangerous heart rhythm. Similar tools are in the works to screen for breathing disorders, depression, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, autism and other conditions. These detection, or digital phenotyping, aids will not replace a doctor anytime soon but can be helpful partners in highlighting concerns that need follow-up. Detection aids can also take the form of ingestible, sensor-bearing pills, called microbioelectronic devices. Some are being developed to detect things such as cancerous DNA, gases emitted by gut microbes, stomach bleeds, body temperature and oxygen levels. The sensors relay the data to apps for recording. 6. Electric aviation could be closer than you think. Electric aviation could be closer than you think. In 2019, air travel accounted for 2.5% of global carbon emissions, a number that could triple by 2050. While some airlines have started offsetting their contributions to atmospheric carbon, significant cutbacks are still needed. Electric airplanes could provide the scale of transformation required, and many companies are racing to develop them. Not only would electric propulsion motors eliminate direct carbon emissions, they could reduce fuel costs by up to 90%, maintenance by up to 50% and noise by nearly 70%. Among the companies working on electric flight are Airbus, Ampere, Magnix and Eviation. All are flight testing aircraft meant for private, corporate or commuter trips and are seeking certification from the U.S. Federal Aviation Administration. Cape Air, one of the largest regional airlines, expects to be among the first customers, with plans to buy the Alice 9 passenger electric aircraft from Eviation. Cape Air's CEO Dan Wolf has said he is interested not only in the environmental benefits but also in potential savings on operation costs. Electric motors generally have longer lifespans than the hydrocarbon-fueled engines in his current aircraft. They need an overhaul at 20,000 hours versus 2,000. Forward propulsion engines are not the only ones going electric. NASA's X-57 Maxwell electric plane, under development, replaces conventional wings with shorter ones that feature a set of distributed electric propellers. On conventional jets, wings must be large enough to provide lift when a craft is traveling at a low speed, but the large surface area adds drag at higher speeds. Electric propellers increase lift during takeoff, allowing for smaller wings and overall higher efficiency. For the foreseeable future, electric planes will be limited in how far they can travel. Today's best batteries put out far less power by weight than traditional fuels. An energy density of 250 watt-hours per kilogram versus 12,000 watt-hours per kilogram for jet fuel. The batteries required for a given flight are therefore far heavier than standard fuel and take up more space. Approximately half of all flights globally are fewer than 800 kilometers, which is expected to be within the range of battery-powered electric aircraft by 2025. 7. Low-carbon cement can help combat climate change. Low-carbon cement can help combat climate change. Microbes will help decarbonize the construction industry. Concrete, the most widely used human-made material, shapes much of our built world. The manufacture of one of its key components, cement, creates a substantial yet underappreciated amount of human-produced carbon dioxide, up to 8% of the global total, according to London-based think tank Chatham House. It has been said that if cement production were a country, it would be the third largest emitter after China and the US. Currently 4 billion tons of cement are produced every year, but because of increasing urbanization, that figure is expected to rise to 5 billion tons in the next 30 years, Chatham House reports. The emissions from cement production result from the fossil fuels used to generate heat for cement formation, as well as from the chemical process in a kiln that transforms limestone into clinker, which is then ground and combined with other materials to make cement. Although the construction industry is typically resistant to change for a variety of reasons, safety and reliability among them, the pressure to decrease its contributions to climate change may well accelerate disruption. In 2018, the Global Cement and Concrete Association, which represents about 30% of worldwide production, announced the industry's first sustainability guidelines, a set of key measurements such as emissions and water usage intended to track performance improvements and make them transparent. 8. Quantum sensors could let autonomous cars see around corners. Quantum sensors could let autonomous cars see around corners. High-precision metrology based on the peculiarities of the subatomic world. Quantum computers get all the hype, but quantum sensors could be equally transformative, enabling autonomous vehicles that can see around corners, underwater navigation systems, early warning systems for volcanic activity and earthquakes, and portable scanners that monitor a person's brain activity during daily life. Quantum sensors reach extreme levels of precision by exploiting the quantum nature of matter, using the difference between, for example, electrons in different energy states as a base unit. Atomic clocks illustrate this principle. The world time standard is based on the fact that electrons in cesium-133 atoms complete a specific transition 9,192,631,770 times a second. This is the oscillation that other clocks are tuned against. Other quantum sensors use atomic transitions to detect minuscule changes in motion and tiny differences in gravitational, electric and magnetic fields. 9. Green hydrogen could fill big gaps in renewable energy. Green hydrogen could fill big gaps in renewable energy as zero-carbon supplement to wind and solar. When hydrogen burns, the only byproduct is water, which is why hydrogen has been an alluring zero-carbon energy source for decades. Yet the traditional process for producing hydrogen, in which fossil fuels are exposed to steam, is not even remotely zero-carbon. Hydrogen produced this way is called gray hydrogen. If the CO2 is captured and sequestered, it is called blue hydrogen. Green hydrogen is different. It is produced through electrolysis, in which machines split water into hydrogen and oxygen, with no other byproducts. Historically, electrolysis required so much electricity that it made little sense to produce hydrogen that way. The situation is changing for two reasons. First, significant amounts of excess renewable electricity have become available at grid scale. Rather than storing excess electricity in arrays of batteries, the extra electricity can be used to drive the electrolysis of water, storing the electricity in the form of hydrogen. Second, electrolyzers are getting more efficient. 10. Whole genome synthesis will transform cell engineering. Whole genome synthesis will transform cell engineering, a big advance in synthetic biology. Early in the COVID-19 pandemic, scientists in China uploaded the virus's genetic sequence, the blueprint for its production, to genetic databases. A Swiss group then synthesized the entire genome and produced the virus from it, essentially teleporting the virus into their laboratory for study without having to wait for physical samples. Such speed is one example of how whole genome printing is advancing medicine and other endeavors. Whole genome synthesis is an extension of the booming field of synthetic biology. Researchers use software to design genetic sequences that they produce and introduce into a microbe, thereby reprogramming the microbe to do desired work, such as making a new medicine. So far, genomes mainly get light edits. But improvements in synthesis technology and software are making it possible to print ever larger swaths of genetic material and to alter genomes more extensively.